Welcome to Men Pursuing More, the podcast for men seeking purpose, growth, and fulfillment. I'm your host, Roger Maupin. In this July, we're stepping into a powerful series that honors the courageous men who paid a price in battle, yet refuse to be defined by their wounds. This month, Men Pursuing More proudly features Wounded Combat Veterans Month, a special tribute to warriors who face the horrors of combat and come home with scars, but not without strength. Their bodies may carry the weight of war, but their spirit unshaken. Wounded in combat, unshaken in purpose. These are the men redefining strength, not just for themselves, but for all of us. You'll hear stories of grit, faith, brotherhood, and the relentless pursuit of purpose on the other side of pain. From the battlefields to civilian life, these men continue to fight, to lead, to grow, and to live with impact. Their stories will challenge you, inspire you, and remind you of the strength that lies in never giving up. If you're ready to walk alongside some of the toughest men alive, men who have every reason to quit but choose to rise, then you're in the right place. Subscribe now and join us for this powerful July series. This is Men Pursuing More, and this month, it's about honor. It's about healing. It's about heroes. All right, welcome back to Men Pursuing More. I'm your host, Roger Maupin. And today we have Kevin Weaver joining us as part of the Wounded Combat Veterans Month in July and wrapping up in this early August for the Wounded Combat Veterans Month. So, Kevin, welcome, and let's get right into your story. So, can you share with the listeners what originally led you to serve in the Air Force and your early experiences shaping your life and your calling?
Yeah, no, that's great. And Roger, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be with you. Growing up in the 70s, late 70s, and then graduating from high school, early 80s, my dad was a government contractor with an aerospace company. Always had a patriotic bent because of that. My father and my mother were, I would say they were just really balanced in how they loved our country and gave me a heart for history. And so when I graduated from high school, went to college for a couple of years and even pursued the idea of maybe attending one of the academies and had some leanings toward that. But I just felt, I want to enlist. I want to just experience that. And so that's what I did, enlisted at the end of 1982. And I served from that time all the way through the end of 89. And so I had one duty station at Howard Air Force Base, Panama. I was in security forces and then worked a little bit with our Office of Special Investigations. So that was back in the day when it was the war on drugs. We didn't have the GWAT. We did have Grenada. I was there during that time. And we had a few other things that were taking place in Central America. It was pretty busy during that period, during the Reagan years. But it was a fantastic experience and loved it and really gave me a heart to really reach out to the guys that I served with. And I became, I guess, aware that relationship within the framework of the challenges that military life really bring, excuse me, that was really important. Having deep relationships with the guys that you served with became a very important part of that process, which kind of leads me to where I am today, to see the way that the journey takes you to that place. So that's where it all began. And I loved it. I got out, went to seminary, finished there, and I ended up doing pastoral ministry for almost 30 years, church planting. But in the midst of that, in fact, our very first church, my wife and I, we went back to Panama and we planted a church for American military and lived in Panama amongst our troops there and just focused on those families. And so that's how it all began with me.
So your kind of faith journey, really the influence was you being in the military, and then just really the kind of continue to serve veterans after that military in more a deeper way. Well, share with us the Warrior's journey is making a huge impact out there around the country. And share with the listeners, what was the spark that ignited the idea for launching this mission? I believe it was back like in the early 2000, or maybe I think it was like 2014. And then some things that kind of came about with the Department of Defense as well as working with the Harvard Business School.
Yeah, I'm really spurred on with my conversations with my nephew. I graduated from high school just right after 9/11. It was that following year, 2002. He immediately enlisted in the Marine Corps. He went to Fallujah. He was in Fallujah with his unit from the West Coast. He was with the 2-1, so Second Marines, and he went in there, and he was one of only 7 guys that came home that wasn't either severely wounded or killed in his platoon. And it affected him. And because I was the only other veteran in our family, he felt inclined to, hey, can we just go talk? And we had a lot of good conversations. Mostly I just listened. And the temptation for me was that I wanted to try to fix it, right? Like, how do I help him? And I really just felt God saying, stop, just listen, be there, just engage with him, give him opportunity to process what he's gone through and be there to support him. And I did. And I saw the cathartic thing that happened. I saw the healing that began to take place, even bringing him back centered to his faith. He said, I always believed in God, but I wasn't really living in a way that was giving God complete control. I was so focused on being a Marine. And so he had some really good things happen, went to sniper school, went back to Iraq in 2006 and spent 15 months on a very long combat tour. And his kinetic engagement there he said it was 10 times what I had in the first engagement. And so we started those conversations all over again. So this was the idea, knowing that, and this is what is distinctively different about the Warrior's Journey. What we do is, and this is where I have the idea, was if we could create an environment where a person who served, no matter what their experience, if we could get them in front of another person who has like experience that they could trust, that will create a sense of safeness, if you will, a safe environment for them to be vulnerable and talk about and process, because that's what they need. They don't, again, this is not to bash any other thing, but I think the go-to system for the VA is, hey, see a psychiatrist, and here's a drug-related regimen that helps you to manage these unique challenges that you face. And I'm telling you, most guys just don't need that. And most people don't want that. They only want that if it's needed. Is it needed for some? Absolutely. There's a place for that, but it's not 100%. And I think that's where we provided it. And all these years up into 2014, I'm watching my kids now. I have 2 boys that have served. One's still serving active duty, and he's in special operations. He's a Green Beret. So we're watching all that happen now, and I'm thinking, hey, we got to do something, because these guys don't have a place to just unload. It's like, I'm okay, I'm good, until all of a sudden they're not good, and they've isolated themselves internally. And so we didn't want to just attack this from a PTSD. So I answered your question about the Pentagon. So we had some amazing contacts through some relationships I'd had over the years. I had a gentleman who was actually serving working as an attaché for the deputy chief of chaplains there at the Pentagon. I said, hey, I got this idea. It's crazy, big idea. But do you think the Pentagon would partner with us as we're starting this thing that we're going to call the Warrior's Journey? Would you partner with us? And we want to do a survey to really discover what are the most severe, unique challenges that people are dealing with that they don't feel like they have a place to go to. And it's way too long to tell the story, but it was an amazing set of miracles that opened that door really within weeks. And all of a sudden that thing was out. That would be a whole nother podcast, how that actually all happened. And it happened. And then the Harvard School of Business came along through another contact I had. He had a contact with a gal there who was really working with Fortune 500 companies. And they were doing this data assimilation for Fortune 500 companies to understand the best ways for marketing. In a sense, that's what we were doing. So how do we take the data that we gathered? Because it was a ton. We actually got a 50% return rate on that survey, and you only need 15 or 20% to make it empirical. So we had all this data. I didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, how do I take all this and put this into a nice, clean report? They did that for us, and we discovered the 12 issues in severity. PTSD ranked number 10. I was shocked, because that's all anybody was talking about. Mm-hmm. So there were 9 other issues that were actually more severe, and some of those even contributed to post-traumatic stress. So we learned a lot. And over the years, we started by building an interactive website, developing articles and video testimonies based on those 12 challenges. Number 1, isolation. Biggest issue, family brokenness, separation, reintegration issues, moral injury, which I'd heard of moral injury, but I didn't really understand what that was. The moral dilemma that many people, which is many times misdiagnosed as PTSD, but there are distinct differences in that. So over the last 10 years, we've become, I think, very astute on these issues, and that's what we focused on. So that's how the Warrior's Journey got started, hoping that we could make a little bit of an impact, and it has exploded into something that we would have never dreamed. So it's been pretty fantastic.
When you talk about isolation, it's one of the most dangerous challenges veterans face. Why do they believe isolation hits warriors so hard, and what can be done about that?
That's a great question. I love that. Thank you. And I wish more people would think about that, because I think what happens is, and when we see actually guys, or we hear about individuals or families call us and say, hey, my husband, my son, took their own life, and there was no sign. Everything looked good. There was no sense of depression. In fact, they were thriving. At least it seemed like they were. And then all of a sudden this happens and their note says, hey, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I think it's counterintuitive to the military too. The military is all about, hey, you got to get squared away in your train. It's mission focused, right? It's all about the mission. And you've got to be there for your unit. You got to be there for the guy that's next to you. There's no room for error. There's that pressure to be the best you can be and to not miss a beat. And so I think what happens with individuals and I had that in my own life in the military. It's got to perform. You're never late. You're always on time. You're always at your best. Bring your A game. So when all of a sudden that A game is affected by what's going on, what we call in these invisible wounds areas, or there's something here. It's not always, and some of it's mental, but a lot of it's, it's a soul care issue, right? And I think that's what we forget sometimes. These guys don't want to talk about that. They're like, how you doing? I'm good, man. I'm good. Because if you say, hey, I got an issue or I need to talk to somebody, what happens in the military is in the active duty setting, you're then taken out of your unit, sent to behavioral health. You go on some kind of regiment. You probably aren't going to promote. You're probably not going to deploy with your buddies. It's going to affect everything. And the military doesn't know how to just help these guys along through that process. It's like they just cut you off because we don't have time. We don't have time for this. And so our response is, man, you wouldn't do that if you had a tank that was broken. You wouldn't throw it away. You'd fix it. You bring it in because you only have limited resources. And the greatest asset of our military are the men and women who are fighting for us. So that's our mantra, right? Hey, invest in these guys in a way, and you don't have to do what you think you do. It doesn't have to be as serious as that. So I think that going back to your question about isolation, guys ignore and override, and they say, I'm fine. And they can be in the midst of a lot of company. They can be around a crowd, but inside they've got things that they just don't know what to do with. And for them to ask for help is a sign of weakness. And nothing could be farther from the truth. Really, being vulnerable is the greatest ethos, I believe, warrior ethos that there is. We raise our right hand. We swear to defend our nation. We sign a blank check at an amount up to including my life. I'm willing to give my life for my country. There's nothing more vulnerable than that. So I think categorizing vulnerability in a way that helps them to understand, which is what we are really working hard at. We were with our Marine Corps group just a little while ago, and we're talking about, hey, vulnerabilities. And they're like, what are you talking about? So how do you define vulnerability? That's, I need help, and I feel this, I feel that, touchy-feely, flowery, all that stuff. And I'm like, guys, no. Let's talk about vulnerability within the Marine Corps ethos. When you're on a beach and you're in a firefight and you're undercover and you're in the fight, and then you see your buddies down the beach and they don't have cover and they're taking it. What do? You run to them. You leave cover and you become... And they said, oh, vulnerable. I said, yes, that's what we're talking about. It's that in the fight. And they're like, oh, we get that all day long. I said, yeah, that's the thing. So when someone's in battle, taking fire, and there's no cover, that's the sign for us to go to that person and say, hey, man, I'm here for you. What's going on? And it just changes everything when you can give them that perspective. So we've worked very hard to tackle that issue along with all these other issues. So we focused on those. And I think that's what's made it so successful, Roger, is we're hitting on things that are raw with these guys. We're attacking the root of the issue, not just some broad scope of, oh, it's all PTSD. And that's so complex. We're trying to understand the complexity and then address it. And one last thing I'll say, we're addressing it one-on-one, individually, customizing it to that person, because you may have a certain issue, but then I talked to this guy over here and it's similar but different. So how do we pivot and address that issue very specifically for that individual? And it's all through that relational one-on-one connector. Everybody gets a connector that they can feel like they can trust to begin that process.
And I like what you just said about that one-on-one, like building that relationship, but also you modify it for that person. It's not like all fits all. But hey, they have different issues going on. If you want to call it issues, just emotions and fun.
And history. There's lots of history involved. There's context, and all of that is different. And it's honestly, it's not. I thought, oh, this is going to be so hard. It's going to be so hard because we're going to have. And honestly, Roger, it really hasn't been that hard, because what it really takes is just someone who will listen and pick up on the nuances of where that person is and saying, listen, I don't understand everything, but I can not just sympathize. I can empathize, because your story's not unlike mine. There's a lot of similarities. So let me come alongside and let me empathize, and tell you how I found hope, what resonates with you, and let's find the next steps. We triage. What is the next step for you? What's going to make sense to you? And we let them take control of their journey and offering opportunities for services, resources, engagements, whatever that might look like. Sometimes we're dealing with addictions and we're dealing with guys that maybe just need a service dog, or a guy that maybe has some family problems and he's just trying to find a way to reconnect with his spouse or his kids. And those are easy, right? Then once you figure it out, then you can say, okay, let's hit this head on. And most of the guys are, all right, let's go. Because if they trust you, they're like, okay, whatever you say, let's go. What I got to lose? Absolutely nothing. And you have everything to gain.
I love that. That's powerful. In your organization, the Warriors Journey is kind of saving lives. I know over 2,000 suicide events and 1,000 served in crisis. What is the first step in helping a warrior who's in that dark place?
As far as from our perspective, you mean our first step?
Yes.
Our first step, I think, is just letting guys know that this is what we're all about. We're about healing invisible wounds. You're not broken. I think most guys are like, man, I hate this whole concept of being treated like I'm a broken thing.
Yeah.
You're not broken. You just need a hand up. And we all do. Everybody needs that. I still need that. And there are times where I got my buddies that I call. There's a support network. Everybody needs to have a community to belong to something that you're not, we've never been or designed to be individually on an island. Everybody needs to find mission. You got to help you find your next mission. And then you need to understand the value that you bring to that mission. And then ultimately, man, it's all about love. I know that's another thing that it's that in the military, it's like, hey, you just need love. And they're like, what? We're out there trying to take out bad guys. You're talking to me about love? I said, yeah. Here's the deal. Because what do you love the most right now? I love the guy fighting next to me.
Yeah.
I love that. And you, I know, understand this, that whole band of brothers idea. And really is true. In the kinetic experiences that I had in the military, there is something about going through those very high intense, magnified, emotional, adrenaline, life on the line, man. And you're just there and you got these guys all around you as a team. And when you get through it, that you're like, man, I love you, man. Thanks. There's just something about experiencing that together that is a bond that's hard to explain. And then when guys get out or they go back home, that's a bond that sometimes is very hard to find. Again, and we all need to be loved. So we try to help them to understand that, hey, love is this big, broad thing. And you experienced this intensity, but what about what you can have with your spouse or your family? And so we just help them realign their perspective. It's really and supporting them in that and having them talk through it. And it's pretty cool. We're not counselors. Now, sometimes these folks, they need counseling. Some of them need maybe serious psychological help. And we have 82 other organizations that we have vetted and partnered with. What we can't do, because we don't want to get so broad that we can't be effective in what we know is important. The most important that we do is offer that one-on-one engagement to help discover what it is that they need. And then we can refer them to some great organizations. And we go with them. We do it with them. Sorry, I hope I'm not going all over.
I appreciate that.
That makes sense.
I'm being educated. It's this Men Pursuing More. The purpose I started this was brotherhood. Mm-hmm. It's brother uplifting brother empowering brother. And I know your model is built around warriors helping warriors. And you've addressed this too about why the peer-to-peer connection is such a game changer in veteran recovery and resilience.
It's really everything. We've seen guys walk in like this with their arms crossed and, all right, hey, what's going on? Nothing. I'm good, man. It's okay. Tell me about your experience. And they open up a little bit and, hey, and so we train we call our warrior connector. We say, hey, you know what? In my experience, this is they're vulnerable. They're going to start doing this. Hey, let me show you some things that you might perceive to be ugly. Or I'm just going to tell you, man, I had a need. I asked for help, got this. And as I walked through that, because here's the thing, when I was in Iraq or Afghanistan and this particular event, man, it haunted me. And they start talking that language. And this other guy's, he's doing this. He's like, yeah, that's me too. It's okay. It's like, all right, you nailed it. And he's sharing his story. You can't argue with that. So he's okay. So really, and what do they feel? Okay, I'm not the only one and I'm not alone. And I think of so many men and women, they feel like they're the only one. They don't know who they can trust to throw that on the table without being judged or feel like they're a monster. And some of our fighting forces, many of them, and we're talking combat guys, many of them experience things that a human being should never experience. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about criminal things. I'm just talking about war. War is ugly. I remember my son coming home from his third deployment in Afghanistan, and he was assigned to what they call it's basically a headquarters where they're helping drone strikes. And he was the XO. And as they were doing missions, they had multiple screens everywhere, and they have these packages, these operations to take certain guys out that were bad guys. And he said, Dad, it was day after day. We'd see that guy, and there's an opportunity. And he said, I was the XO, and if the commander wasn't there, usually it was always at night, and I was the guy that working at night. And he's like, and here's what I'd say: execute, boom. And we would watch in full living color the destruction of human life in a way that was massive and overwhelming. And then on camera, watching the families respond to that, he goes, yeah, and these were really bad guys. These were really bad dudes. But it doesn't change the fact that they're still human beings. And he goes, and Dad, I have no regrets, but man, that weighs on you time after time. And so I'm like, hey, keep talking. This is good. Keep talking. And I pray for him. And I wouldn't necessarily give him anything that would help them through that other than just letting him talk about it and say, and here's what the Bible says, and here's what the Word of God says, and finding an encouragement in that. And Roger, it's just really cool. Everybody's different. And even folks that haven't been in that kind of setting and supporting all that, but they're exposed to it as well. They get exposure to the separation from family. You're always potentially, you never know, if you serve in the military, it is the only profession where you raise your right hand and say, listen, I'm willing to die for this, right? There is no other profession in the world, maybe policeman, other than the fact that you hope you're not saying that I'm going to be in a war, other than the fact that you're going to put yourself in harm's way. So those are pretty serious deals. And when you live with that constantly, it weighs on you over time.
And I know you've shared this in this podcast, but you share a little bit more about what role does faith and spiritual strength play in that kind of resiliency process for veterans and their family?
Yeah, that's again another great question. So we follow that pillars of resiliency, and I think the military's got it right. There's a physical, emotional, there's a social, a psychological, and a spiritual anchor, and we have to be balanced in those things. And so not too many people focus on the spiritual side. We focus on all of those. We're a holistic approach, but we really try to bring guys to a place to say, hey, would you like to just explore? What does it look like to have an experience with what we believe to be our Creator? And what's His plan for you? Where are you at in that story? And we usually just offer that up. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that 99% of the people we talk to are like, yeah, I'm happy to go there because, again, what do I have to lose? And some come from faith backgrounds, many of them, obviously. Some have maybe walked away from their faith because they're struggling with their faith. And so we find that faith, and there's science in this. Duke University, Columbia University, both have done major studies on the importance of faith. And with faith comes, scientifically, faith changes your brain. It changes the way that you think, the perspective, all that. There's some amazing science behind this. And so we really try to push toward that, say, guys, don't just push that off. You want to explore that, and we're happy to walk that with you. And everybody who is a connector, that's one of the requirements we have, has to have a faith story. It has to be able to engage with an individual if and when they want to go there, at least by telling them their testimony. There's Roger, the Bible says we overcome by the power of the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And we take that very seriously here because there is something very powerful about someone sharing their story. You can't argue with it. Here's my experience. I'm not trying to tell you what's right and wrong, but I'll tell you what is right and wrong for me. And this is what I've discovered. And most people are like, man, I want that. So we just do that in a we try to be very creative because, again, it's all about how do I gain trust? And we're not pushing an agenda. We want to push an opportunity. We're pushing the environment that Jesus called us to be people who love others, make ourselves available, to be the hands and feet of Christ. And then let that be so much a part of the verbal stuff that we share, hopefully is backed up by the things that we express.
You were made for more clarity, more confidence, more impact. At Maupin Coaching, I help high school and college athletes master the mental game and guide men into purpose-driven leadership. Grab the sports book, rock that merch coming soon, and step into more at maupincoaching.com. What are some of the most maybe moving or unexpected stories of transformation? I know you've shared a lot in regards to transformation that you've witnessed through the Warrior's journey.
Can I just share one quick story maybe as an example? Is that okay?
That'd be awesome.
And I'll try to be real brief. I know we're getting close on time here. This was a couple years back, but as a representation of what happens really every day. Got a call. I happened to be on call. We took call on weekends and we take turns as a team. And Sunday afternoon, it came through our app. We have it's a hotline, and this came through on our hotline, and it's immediate real time. Hey, my husband, he's a Special Forces, 10th Group Special Forces guy, getting ready to retire. He just walked in and said he wanted to take his life. I don't know what to do. I'm frantic. Can you help me? So we responded right back. My wife and I, we said, hey, my wife's with me. I'm Kevin from the Warrior's Journey. Yes, we'd love to help you, and we can help him. Would you like to call us? Here's our number. She immediately called us. So we have a conversation, and she's telling us about his dilemma. And really his dilemma, we focus on those four things: love, community, value, and mission. And he was struggling with the value and mission. He said to her, listen, I kill bad guys for a living for 27 years. I've got to get out now because I can't. They were medically, he was dealing with a lot of brokenness and healing. And he said, I just can't do it anymore. So, hey, we're going to make you retire, go live your life and have a good time. He's like in his mid 40s. He's, man, live my life. My life is it's not even halfway over. He was thinking, I have nothing to offer. There is nothing like on the outside of the military that will engage in my skill set. So he thought. And so he felt the best thing I can do for my family. And he even felt like this would be the Jesus thing to do, to sacrifice my life so I could get the $500,000 benefit to take care of my family. Because there's no way that I'm going to be able to get a job. He was in a dark place. That's just a very dark lie. And she's freaking out because in fact, he was the sergeant major of 10th Group. He was the top enlisted guy. He was a very squared away dude. But this shook him, this transition. So I said, hey, listen, I've got some connectors that are also Special Forces guys. I had one guy in particular I knew would be a great battle buddy for him. Let's get him connected. Let's do this first thing. We'll take care of this first thing tomorrow morning. We'll get him connected. And she said, hey, he just walked in. Once you talk to him, here he is. I'm like, and she hands the phone to him. He's like, hello. And his name was Paul. She told me his name. I said, hey, Paul, how do you know my name? I said, because your wife told me. Why'd you call me? I said, I didn't call you. Your wife called us. I'm just going to be honest with you, Paul, because you freaked her out today when you told her you wanted to take your life. And that's a really hard thing to process. And he goes, who are you? And I said, I'm Kevin with the Warrior's Journey. We're a military veteran service organization that helps guys just like you to discover options. And the option that you're considering is not a very good one. You think that's the only one? I'm telling you, there are about 7,467 other options here that we can help you at least explore. And he's like, all right, you got my attention. And here's what he said. Were you military? I said, yes, sir, I was. What branch of the service did you serve in? And I thought, okay, here we go. Because if I would have told him that I was an Air Force guy, he's a Green Beret. So I'm like, okay. And that's why I didn't want to talk to him, because I'm like, I don't want to lose this first impression. I need to get him in touch with a guy that he trusts and is legitimate for him, right? And all the jokes about, Sheriff Force and all this stuff. So I said, hey, Paul, before I answer that question, I'll just tell you, my son is a Green Beret. He's an ODA commander. And we started, what unit is he in? I told him, I know those guys. And boom, that was my connection. It was actually through my son. I said, I'm not a Green Beret, but I'm a Green Beret dad. And I said, I did serve myself, and I just let it go. And then we worked it out. Long story short, he went through several different programs. Within 6 months, man, he's getting out. We helped him find 4 or 5, I can't remember, but it was multiple job opportunities. One was with Lockheed, a 6-figure job doing logistic management. And I didn't realize, I go, you got so many skills you weren't even thinking about. And he decided, he was so encouraged by that, he decided to start his own business. And now he's doing fantastic. He has like a landscaping business, loves it, and he's thriving. And now he's one of our connectors. He's made full circle, come back around. So that's the goal, is how do we get them back in and then finding mission, not just about their own work or their next mission as it relates to their vocation, but what they can do to change lives, helping other guys like them. And so we've created that environment. It's pretty cool. It's amazing, Roger, how that happens.
And you have that's one of so many stories, and how powerful that is. Is
every day. I'm telling you, and it takes time, right? I mean, that was a 6-8 month kind of process, but every day. But we know it can happen, right? We say, this guy, he seems hopeless. Hey, boom, with a little bit of attention, we can help this person find some options that will lead them to a place of hope, and which ultimately leads to healing.
Now, share with us just briefly about some tools to build a community, like the use of adaptive sports. I know there's the Warrior Games, Invicta, there's other, and also how you include workshops and seminars with veterans and explain that kind of process.
Yeah, so we have an adaptive sports kind of initiative. Golf is one of the things that we use. A PGA has gotten behind us. But what we do is, I'll just briefly talk about the sports part of it is just the draw, right? It's get them in, get them apart. Well, we constitute an environment where we do these events. We do sometimes 3-day events, 1-week events. We get guys in. We do very small groups, usually groups of 12 to 20 max. 12 is our magic number. And we get them in, and many of them don't know each other, but they become like lifelong friends by the time the week is over. And we use golf as just a tool. And then we engage with what we call V Talks. They think it stands for veteran talk. But behind the scenes, it's vulnerable. It's like, how do we get them to be vulnerable? And I'm telling you, by day 2, these guys are spilling their guts to each other. And Roger, it is so fun to watch just the healing. These are hard chargers, but watching those guys by day 2, day 3, embracing each other, weeping together over things that they never had a chance to talk about, and in an environment where they can just let it go and not feel like there's any lack of dignity in the process. So we try to leverage those opportunities. So adaptive sports, we have other opportunities for workshops in our resiliency centers. We have a resiliency center in Germany, one in Japan. We have our headquarters center here in the Midwest in Springfield, Missouri. And we have desires. We have one in Wichita, Kansas, near McConnell. We have a desire to have a resiliency center in every state where there's military and or veterans. That's really our long-term goal. Because if we can find those collective points where we get small groups, and that's where we partner with other organizations like Reboot, Military Reboot, or Mighty Oaks, which is another amazing organization that we partner with. They do a tremendous intensive. So just giving them as many tools as possible. We feel like we're the hub, and then we can help them find all these other opportunities that really speak to the pragmatic side of what they're going through spiritually, emotionally, and even physically.
And that model,
that makes sense, but hope that helps.
Oh, that's very helpful. It's like that model that you have, warriors helping warriors, and how they can just be vulnerable.
It's the first thing you see when you walk in our building. We have it in a big, it's on the wall in big giant letters, warriors helping warriors. This is what this is all about.
Hey, can you share just real briefly, we're going to wrap this up in a few minutes, about some things that have developed recently with your with the National Task Force and possibly reforms in the VA, or that could be a whole nother podcast, but just
could. I will tell you though, yeah, we are a VA vendor. We were able to through that survey, we gave that information back to the DoD, and they're like, well, how much money do you want for this? And I'm like, I don't want any money for it. I want to share this because this is just what we found. And they're like, okay, how can we help you? It's like, how about give us a government contracting number because we want to do workshops done. And typically what would take sometimes years, God really helped us fast track that. So we've been doing DoD workshops. We've done over 400 DoD workshops in the last 10 years. We've been working with the VA as a vendor. But recently, with the new administration, there have been some real open doors, especially on the faith side. There's a real leaning towards let's bring faith back into, and we're perfectly positioned for that. So what's happened is, in fact, I can't share a lot about it because I really don't know what's going to happen, but we have been contacted by the Pentagon to potentially develop resources for clergy on a national scale and to do a national certification. And that's really all I know at this point, that there's really deep interest, and they've contacted us to say, hey, could you guys help us lead the charge on this? And we've got some meetings coming up. That's pretty exciting. We'll see what happens there. And then also to develop a national task force on veteran suicide to finally just, hey, let's address the shortcomings of the VA. Let's do it collectively and constructively, not as a criticism, but what can we do to take community organizations and veteran service organizations that are having an impact? Let's bring them alongside the VA. How could we work together to really win this battle? This is a huge part of the war of invisible wounds, is the battle of suicide, and it's a massive one. Roger, over 140,000 individuals have committed suicide who have served in the military since 9/11, and that's just unacceptable. And the numbers are getting worse every day. It's not decreasing, it's increasing. Even the VA admits that. And there's a way to win that war. There really is. I believe that we can bring that to a place where it's happening like an epidemic, down to a very rare case. It really should be rare. If we see a dozen suicides amongst our veterans in a year, that's where we need to be. Not the, some say 22 a day. It's more 40, 50 a day. That has got to stop. We got to figure this out. Yeah. And I feel like we have figured out one way that can happen. Now, if we could collectively put our hearts and minds together to make that change, it can happen. I'm confident we can see that happen. So we've appealed to the administration. We're waiting to hear back very soon. There is a lot of interest. And I think if there's ever such a time as this, I think it's right now. There's a lot of neat things that are happening, opportunities that are opening up for us to maybe do some things that have never been done before.
Yeah, that's like overwhelming, that number. That's just, I think
It is.
most people don't even know that. Wow,
No. And about 40 to 50,000 of those are actual guys who fought in the war on terror. And the rest are Vietnam guys and guys from Korea, older guys in my era that were in that late 70s to all the way up to 2000s area. There's still guys like that are taking their lives because of the visible wounds that they experienced in the military that exacerbated their life, and they just don't know how to get out. So we got to reach them.
All right, Kevin. Hey, let's get to the wrap up of this episode on really kind of your journey, but also the Warriors' journey. As we wrap up our month honoring the wounded veterans. So it was called the Wounded Combat Veterans Month. What message you want to leave with men listening who may be battling that, we talk silently, or who know someone who is, that's really maybe in the struggles? Or
That's good. Let me address both of those. So I think the guys who are, if you're listening to this and you're thinking internally, yeah, there are some things inside that I've just not been either willing to or felt super apprehensive about just throwing on the table, I would say, listen, I think we need to generate a different perspective on what wounded warriors are, because I think we think about those physical wounds. And hey, listen, there's a lot of guys who suffered catastrophic wounds, and watching the resiliency of these individuals, and even watching the amazing care that the VA does give to these adaptive tools today, which is just simply awesome. It's great. And we can equip people for battle. We can even take care of their bodies maybe afterwards. But the thing that we haven't done very well is what's going on here. And I call it mind and soul care of a person. So if you're listening, please, here's my message. It's really simple. Just please don't be afraid just to reach out. There are organizations. We're definitely one of them. I'm not going to tell you we're not a silver bullet, but I think we're one of the very few organizations that is approaching this from a relational engagement perspective, that brother to brother engagement, because we feel that's so vital, so important. And you can't force a relationship, but you can certainly create an environment where that relationship can happen pretty naturally and organically if you get the two right people in the same room. And that's what we work hard to do. So we'd love to talk to you if you're listening, or if you know someone. Here's the thing I would say, please talk to that person. We don't cold call people. I can't tell you how many times, Roger, I've had a mom or a wife or someone say, oh, you got to call my husband. And I'm like, okay, here's the deal. I'd love to call your husband, love to call your son, love to call your nephew or whatever it may be. But you need to get permission from them for us to engage. In fact, it's always better if, hey, here's our contact, if they would contact us, because if they don't initiate it, then it sometimes causes more damage than good. We learned that early on. Oh, hey, somebody who really loves you is, what? Who are you? They didn't say this, but it's kind of like, how dare you invade my space here? I didn't give you permission to get away from me. So we relearn early on, it's got to be their engagement. So if you know someone, be a part of the solution by relationally talking to them about, hey, I've heard about this amazing organization. Here's how they work. They do it relationally with other warriors. Hey, would you ever consider giving them a call, or can I connect you to these guys? Would you be willing to do that? And we're happy to reach out if they say thumbs up, if that makes sense. So that's what I would say. But find help, get help, don't wait. And just because there isn't any visible sign, or if you think that everything's just okay, look for other signs, the things that maybe the hunches. Talk to wives, especially wives and spouses, husbands that maybe their wives have served. If there's just a hunch, it's better to be safe than sorry. Address the issue. Don't just pretend that everything's okay if you notice something that maybe just seems off. And it could be very small. We like to do preventative work more than we do intervention work, right? We like to get it before it becomes a crisis. We'll deal with the crisis if and when it's needed. But if we can do something prior to that, it's always best. And we have lots of options there, lots of cool things, lots of great things. I can get you in touch with a lot of people who've been through our programs and our services that we offer, and they'd say, man, I just wish I would have done this sooner. This is fantastic. That's typically the response that we get. So give us a call, reach out to us.
And I love your model. Here I am using the word love, love your brother, brotherhood, but your model of like warriors helping warriors, brothers helping brothers.
Yep.
I think that's so powerful because they know they're reaching out to a person that's been through it, like a veteran that's been through it. It's not like someone like me that's never been through it. I don't know what a special ops, I don't know what it's like in Afghanistan. I don't know what it's like someone being in war.
Yeah.
That someone's actually been through it that relational can relate to them. And that's
Absolutely.
powerful.
It's a simple thing, but it is so effective. The reason why we have a 99.9% success rate in our suicide interventions, which over 4,200 now, Roger, that's why I'm going to tell you people, how does that work? I said, that's how it works. And not to mention, then you couple that with this thread of faith. If we can thread faith through it, that's what makes it sustainable. Will you give people an eternal sense of hope? There's a mission and purpose that's beyond even what I can see. Because I can't figure it all out, but I know if God's got it all figured out and he has me in his hands and he's for me, holy cow, that changes everything. That's a game changer. So that's the message. Pretty simple, but very powerful.
Kevin, thank you so much for your willingness to share.
Thank you.
Where can listeners find you and not only just follow this story, but find your organization and find you?
So the best way to contact us is through our website. It's very robust, very interactive, over 7,000 articles and video testimonies on there. Each page has this little red button that says, let's talk. And when you're ready to connect with us, hit that button. It'll take you 10 seconds. We just need to know who you are, a little bit about your military experience, and hit send. And if you want to tell us what's going on, if you want to give us some information on that, we get that immediately, real time, and literally someone will be speaking to you within minutes. We'll be connecting with you to set up what will be whatever that customized plan is for you. And we'd love to engage with you.
And what is your website? Is it
twj.org. Pretty simple.
twj.org.
That's right. For the Warrior's Journey, twj.org. Pretty simple.
And so if they do the research, they don't do that, they can just do the Warrior's Journey.
They can. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. You can find it there. We're on Instagram, Facebook. You can message us there, whatever. We have different ways of mediums that you can find us. We do have a phone number. I can give that number if you like, if you want to call our office. Yeah. 417 area code. So 417-567-4800, 567-4800. So 417-567-4800, and give us a call. We can do that too. Either way.
Appreciate that. Not only giving you information, but that phone number too at the end, because some might I need to call somebody.
Absolutely. So please reach out, guys. And we're here at the ready, and we would be honored to come alongside and help you find that next mission. God's got a plan for you, and we'll help you find it.
All right. That's a wrap with Kevin Weaver and the Warrior's Journey. And I want to thank you for being a part of Men Pursuing More podcast.
Thanks, Roger.
Hey, thanks for listening to Men Pursuing More podcast. Don't forget to follow us at maupincoaching.com.